Dave Tosh, Executive Director, Wenatchee Valley Senior Activity Center, and today I'm joined by Nancy Warner. And Nancy is a coordinator with IRIS, which is a local organization, and she's going to talk quite a bit here about IRIS, what they do, what their mission is. So Nancy, let's go right into it. I know you've been in the Valley for quite some time, working with IRIS, and we just want to know a little bit more about the organization, so take it away.
Okay, well, thanks for having me. Nice to be with you on this wintry morning.
Yeah, a little cool out.
So I have been in North Central Washington for 21 years now and involved with IRIS for most of those years. And we are a regional nonprofit, so while we've been officed here in Wenatchee, we work in Okanogan, Chelan, Douglas, and Grant counties. And we foster sustainable rural communities. That's our mission, and we do that by gathering and sharing success stories that enhance a sense of belonging, inspire action, and build community.
Okay.
And we believe that successful communities in a healthy environment create success. So we really look for stories that integrate all of those components of a healthy community.
And as I understand it, this all started with the college, right? The Wenatchee Valley College?
Yeah, it started with Kent Mullinex, who was the director of the agriculture program, who had a passion for sustainable agriculture and family farms. And Kent and a colleague, David Granatstein from WSU, they put their heads together. This was a time when Bob Parlett was the interim president at the college, like 2003, 2002. They put their heads together and said, what can we do to stem the loss of family farms? What can we do to create a more sustainable future for family farms? And at that point in history, a lot of apple orchards were going out of production. Orchards were being torn out. And so it was a big pivot point. And so they decided to start, it was initially called the Institute for Rural Innovation and Stewardship, but the acronym IRIS has stayed. And when we left the college, instead of becoming where we were an institute, we became an initiative. And so we could keep the acronym. And our work is, while we're not associated with the college, we left the college to do more community development work beyond education. We've always been an organization that was designed to be catalytic. We want to try programs that are innovative, that can be replicated. And while we operate at a regional level, it's always been our hope and design that IRIS programs could be replicated in other parts of the state.
So you've got a lot of interviews that have been recorded, is that correct, that have been done over the years?
Yeah, so we've gathered and shared stories as our...
I call them interviews, but stories.
Yeah, well, a lot of them are interviews.
Yeah.
Many of them are interviews, and they're not soundbite interviews. They're full oral histories. Some are longer than others, but I would say the average interview that we've done is probably about 40, 45 minutes. Sometimes they go to 80. And occasionally, not often, we're able to do more than one interview with an individual. And of course, we're always really happy that we've had a chance to do that. Even one interview with somebody is so much better than that phrase that I've heard most of my life that I hate, which is, if only we'd ask so-and-so before they died about this. Yeah. And so that's a big motivator for me in doing this work. It's like, there's a lot of knowledge out there if you just take time to ask people. And but along with that knowledge, you get people's laugh and get to know them. And it's just the most fun work. So I started doing oral histories for IRIS in 2005 with John Cyrus from the Colville Tribes. We had a pilot radio program on Coho. It was the first time we used the program named Gathering Our Voice. And then I left my other job, which I had I had a full-time job with the Nature Conservancy, which is what brought me here to North Central Washington. I left that job because I really had a passion for this work and wanted to do it. So, so I started really doing a lot of interviews, oral histories, with many partners and volunteers around the region during the period from 2008 till about 2017. And more recently have been gathering those stories into an archive. So that's one part of our work, are these recorded interviews, and they're audio, although we have produced some videos, you know, excerpting that work. But the other bank of success stories we have is from another program that we have called the North Central Washington Community Success Summit. And you may have heard of this. We produce, with the Wenatchee World, they've helped us produce a supplement each year to go with the summit, which is just full of success stories from the region. And that's an event that we're going to keep doing, but it's going to look different after COVID. We've been doing it in gyms. Once a year, in a high school gym, or one year it was at the Waterville Fairgrounds. And now we're hoping, when we continue these summits and the stories that we gather, that we can do kind of a hybrid event where some people could be there together and others would be online or on Zoom. But we do gather one-page success stories in association with that event. And so we have about 300 of those, almost as many as the oral histories. So, so that's two different kinds of stories. And then we've continued to do work on food systems too, which is goes from reports and assessments to educational materials, outreach materials. So that's kind of our content.
So if someone had a real interest in accessing the archives, would they have to contact you, or how does that work?
No, this is sort of a dream coming true as we sit here. This is new, that we've been working with the North Central Washington Library for actually a few years, but most intensively the last 2 years, to get all this IRIS content into a digital archive that can be accessed from anyone's phone or their desktop computer, their iPad, any kind of digital device. Will allow you to search the archive. You could search it by name. Need to do an interview with you about the senior center, and then somebody could type in your name and or Wenatchee, Chelan County, or Wenatchee, any number of keywords, and there you'd pop up.
So these things are not found on YouTube and things like that, public domain. They have to access well, they can Google the topic, right, and it'll come up, but then is there an access point?
Yes. And the domain name we chose is NCWCollections.org. And NCWCollections.org is designed to house the IRIS archives initially, but we're also hoping that it will house the digital archives of other organizations that don't have the time to figure this all out. And so we designed it to be replicable. And so we're really excited. And you may know Jerry Eisenhart.
I know of him.
Jerry up in Chelan. So Jerry's one person who's also working on a huge archive from Cozy Radio. And Jerry may be interested in using NCW Collections to house a lot of historical interviews they did on Chelan. And so we've partnered with the museums for over the years, sharing interviews and helping doing various projects together. And we're hoping that this will help some of the small museums that may not have the capacity to develop their own archive system, that they could just jump on and put some of their stuff on this. So So it's not on YouTube. We chose not to go with YouTube, but we do use SoundCloud to stream the audio. So, but when you don't have to worry about that. You just go to North Central Washington Collections, and the audio is there along with transcripts for most of the interviews, which is one of the huge pieces of work. And it's a piece of work that we continue to need help on also.
Well, if someone is struggling to, that may not be, really good on a computer, and they want more information, could they contact you or someone in your organization to find out more? Or maybe they want to do an interview or something.
Yeah.
And so what is that contact information?
It's all on our website, but I can be reached at nancy@irisncw.org, my email address, and this is on the website, the NCW Collections, the contact information. And also, if a person is computer literate or not, and if they're not, they probably have a friend or a relative who could show them around the website, because on the website, it comes with a companion handbook, and the handbook provides a little bit of background on the collections, as well as examples of how you can use it. And then it also links to position descriptions and guides for doing a project. And so if you wanted to interview Aunt Lucy before she passed on, if you wanted to do it as a family or just as an individual, you could go to the website, open up the how to do an oral history, do it, and then send it to us to be archived. And then we would also look for a volunteer to transcribe that interview. So it's community work.
Yeah.
It's totally about community, about all hands contributing there. And that's one way to contribute. And there are a lot of different ways. Even if it might be better to just start by listening to some interviews and reading transcripts. And one thing we need help with is some of the transcripts are pretty rough. And so we need people just to listen to an interview with the transcript in front of them and edit to make it better reflect what the person is actually saying. Because some of it's been done by artificial intelligence, and some of it's just been done by people that don't live here.
Yeah.
And they don't know the place names.
Sure.
They don't get the connections, and so there's some proofing that needs to go on.
So you're looking for some volunteers as well.
Yeah, definitely. Volunteers to help make the collection better and bigger.
And they could just email you and say, hey, I'd like to learn a little more about this. I might be able to help you out.
Yeah, and the other thing that people could do is that doesn't involve technology. They could listen to interviews about where you live. Say you lived in Monitor, or let's take someplace more remote. Let's say you lived in Concanelli in Okanagan County, and you wanted to listen to some interviews about that landscape. You could listen to those interviews. You could figure out what's missing. Who else has a really important part of the story, that history of Concanelli, and that might motivate you to do an interview. You might also just listen to those interviews and think about your own story and how your story fits in and write about it. So we also have on our website a blog where we're inviting people to write their own stories about how they came to this place. And so having some context is useful to see how you fit in, or at least to explain how you fit in. So there's all different ways you could use it passively just to listen to, and we have some playlists, that where content is clustered around a place, or you could just dive in and actually do interviews and help edit transcripts.
There's another program in our area called Elder Speak,
Yes.
and I imagine you're familiar with it. It sounds similar because they're trying to identify people that mostly have lived here a long time in our valley and know quite a bit about the history, and they're trying to capture that. So do you work with them?
Yeah, when they first started, because they haven't been doing this as long as we have
Yeah.
been. I went to the first program that they did, and they only do once a year,
Right.
a performance. I don't know if you call it a performance. It's a conversation.
Yeah.
But no, I think it's great, and I think it's totally complementary. We haven't
Yeah.
been directly working together in the last few years, but I'm hoping that they might be another organization that could take advantage of the archive, the infrastructure that we've built. And but yeah, their format is great and different than what we've done, but I really like it because they spend like a whole year with a
Oh, yeah.
group of people.
Yep.
And we work a little faster than that.
Uh-huh.
But the thing that's really great about what they do, some of what happens in their process also happens at our success summits, because it's about getting people together in the same room. Or we also do group interviews. And so this mic that I'm wearing is of interest to me because I've done many group interviews. I was skeptical about those at first because of the audio. And so I put a recorder in the middle of the table. It was Columbia Breakspire Interpretive Center was the first group interview I ever did. And 12 wonderful people, founders of that organization. And I thought, well, this will be interesting, but probably a waste of time in terms of good audio. And it turned out it was pretty good audio, and it was a really interesting and fun interview because people tee off of what each other says. And somebody remembers something, somebody else has another take on it. And so I really like doing group interviews. And so that's probably the thing that we do that's closest to what the Ripple Foundation does with Elder Speak.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's kind of it's an event you can stage pretty quickly. It doesn't take a whole year.
Well, I grew up in the Valley, and I always look back and think, boy, I should have sat down with my grandparents and my parents and really wrote some things down, to pass on to my children. Never did that, I have a lot of that in my memory, and, I think this is a great way to capture some things that we lose over time.
Yeah, well, it's always too late in some respects. Everybody has regrets. But the thing is even if it's not your family, I mean, it could be your next door neighbor.
Yeah.
I mean, it just somebody that you admire and you're curious about. It's a chance to keep learning. Mm-hmm. I mean, I love this work because I guess I'm insatiably curious and I like people. And boy, people just surprise you all the time with the neat things they have done and their perspective. So I actually think it grows heart. This work grows heart. Mm-hmm. And, you get out of yourself, you get into somebody else's head. It's good for you. It's good for your health.
Well, one of the things that I've really enjoyed, I've been the executive director at the Senior Center for over 8 years. And at lunchtime, I always devoted time to sit down and have lunch with different people to chat about things. And not all of them, but many of them are natives of the Valley that I've been able to talk to. And it was very rewarding to me in so many ways because I grew up here and it was amazing, all the different connections and all the history that they would mention that, we, in many cases, don't capture.
So where'd you grow up? What part of town?
In Cashmere.
Oh, in Cashmere.
And my grandparents settled up there in the early 1900s.
Okay.
So there was a lot of his family history there. Had a small business. The family had a small business up there for many years. Oh. And so I got to know a lot of the locals up there because I hung around the business as a young man, let's call it. Uh-huh. And so I have a lot of fond memories of all of that. And I just wish that we were able to capture some of what I experienced and what I heard,
Well, you have those stories actually that could be recorded because your memories, just will be really valuable.
Maybe it's time for me to do some of this.
Yeah. That's kind of what I'm thinking. And Cashmere, we could certainly use more stories from Cashmere. The whole Yaxon Canyon area. I did interview Tom Hart. Who has a lot of the same sort of business connections that you probably do. Is Tosh a logging family name?
The which?
Is your last name, were you in logging? Or
No,
orchard?
we had my granddad built a service station in Cashmere.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
the stories come up all the time of things that went on down there. And, it's just been real interesting for me. But we just interviewed the Cashmere folks that put that they're digitizing the newspaper,
Right. I heard.
and they're doing a lot of interviews, and then we went up and interviewed Tom Hart and
Oh,
some of
you
the
did?
folks yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm familiar with that.
Okay, good.
And I think they've done a great job with that, because they basically went through the history of Cashmere and all the various businesses that the families had up there, including mine. And so
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the interview. I enjoyed talking to them, and I had a personal attachment to all that.
Yeah, that's neat. Well, and they have a good museum there too.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
which I think Tom's on that board.
Yeah, Tom and Dick Brender also. Dick Brender's, his family was the original settlers in that valley,
Right.
Brender Canyon and all of that.
Yeah.
So Nancy, I want to thank you for joining us today. I've learned a lot about Iris, and I think it's a really nice resource for our area. So again, if someone wants to find out more, they want to get involved with Iris, what's the best way for them to find that information?
Well, they can go to the IRIS website,
Okay.
which is irisncw.org. So irisnorthcentralwashington.org. And that's a good place to start. From there, you can go to the North Central Washington Collections, or explore the blog. But North Central Washington Collections is just NCWCollections.org.
Okay.
So those two websites will pretty much take you where you need to go to explore Iris and contact me and others in the organization.
Well, thanks again for being with us today.
Okay, thank you.
All right.